Welcome to Sam Talks Telehealth. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to interview co-founder of Rezilient Health, Jeff Gamble. He is a PhD, a super smart fellow. I'm excited to bring this podcast to you today. As of course, full disclosure, I do serve as an advisor for Rezilient and have had the opportunity to know Jeff outside of the podcast. So I'm really excited to have him on the show and talk about founder's journey. With that, let's get straight to the show. Hey, Jeff, super excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so obviously I told everyone beforehand, we know each other through my advising work and you at Rezilient, so I'm excited. Give me a little brief so that people know a little bit who you are, some of your background. Give me your intro.
Yeah. Happy to do so. So I'm Jeff Gamble. I'm co-founder and chief technology officer here at Rezilient Health. We are a St. Louis-based startup. We have a virtual concierge primary care practice where patients can access their doctor through messaging, video, and our key innovation, CloudClinics, where patients can come to a conveniently located site, get vitals and physical exams from a telepresenter while talking to the physician in real time on the screen. So our whole goal is, how do you take a primary care relationship and convert it to one that is fully virtual so that you can get essentially the best of both worlds. You get the convenience of telehealth, but then you also get the broad scope of care that can be delivered in person. My background, originally engineering, so did my undergrad in biomedical engineering at Duke University. Originally got into that because I was really interested in developing novel prosthetics. I'm kind of the generation where my high school years were during the Iraq-Afghanistan wars. My dad was in the military. And so the big topic at the time with him as a healthcare provider was, we have a lot of amputees coming back from the Middle East. What do we do to help them regain function? So that really sent me down this path of trying to combine engineering and healthcare. Pretty quickly realized I was really interested in the brain science side of things. And so, picked up a minor in that, started to do research in deep brain stimulation and vagus nerve stimulation. That research brought me back home to St. Louis, where I did my PhD in neural engineering here at WashU, was really interested in neuroplasticity, brain-machine interfaces, kind of the full gambit. So I got like a really broad engineering education where I had to do a ton of signal processing, some electrical engineering, data science, machine learning, even some wet labs. So I'm actually very familiar with stem cells. And so my engineering kind of biology background is all over the place, but it really positioned me well for when it came time to start a company in this space, because I was just comfortable with a lot of different types of technologies, paradigms. And yeah, probably about halfway through my PhD, I got an opportunity to work in product at a local startup here, Neurolutions, where they were doing stroke rehab. So, taking EEG data from patients and using that to control robotic gloves in real time so that they could regain hand function. Got to work really closely with the VC that was their main backer, the CEO, their head of engineering. And so that was kind of my first foray into startups where I said, man, this is something that I really could do. I feel like, being in a lab all the time just wasn't really my jam. And I really loved, one, interacting from like the business perspective. But that experience was the first time I got to interact directly with patients. And it was that interaction with patients where I just couldn't replace that in kind of the academic setting. So yeah, set me down the path of what we're doing. And then my co-founder, Danish, he's an ear, nose, throat physician by training. And he and I met while we were both at WashU at the same time and kind of hit it off, saw the same problem and decided to kind of dedicate our time and energy to solving that.
I love it. That's cool because now I'm even learning new things about you. I didn't already know in terms of, this different brain science, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. Not only stroke, but mental health. And even we look at neuroplasticity in terms of trauma that people have experienced. How do you even use non-machines to then reprogram some of your own experiences? So that'll be for another topic. Okay, so first question for you. What do you see? You've got a really broad, from interest in prosthetics to brains to obviously what you're doing at Rezilient, what I'm blessed enough to have a chance to be a part of with you. So, what do you really see as the future of healthcare innovation?
Yeah, from my perspective, and I think it's because I've had exposure to a lot of different technologies over the years. When I look at healthcare, I see a lot of innovation happening where there's a ton of technologies that are becoming available, but how they get utilized and incorporated into kind of the clinical workflows that exist today, it's really difficult. Those workflows were built around kind of archaic infrastructure. So when I look at, where do I want to live and where do I want my company to live, kind of in the broad spectrum of innovation in healthcare, it's around really innovating the infrastructure that is used to deliver care. Right now, it is hyper fragmented, which makes it really difficult to incorporate new technologies as they come out. I believe that what we're building is kind of one of the first examples of kind of a unified technological infrastructure where no matter what modality you use, it's all tied together in the same ecosystem. And so I think whoever it is, whether it's us or if we're not successful doing it, someone else will be. But whoever is able to truly build the pipes for healthcare of the future is going to be the big winner, because eventually that's going to be the infrastructure and platform for others to develop on, for others to incorporate the various tools. There's like 1 million RPM companies. There's 1 million connected device companies. There's 1 million virtual care companies. At some point, we all have to be doing work on the same infrastructure, or we're all just wasting a ton of money and time. So I see that as being the really exciting area for healthcare in the future.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously, I talk a lot about workflows, not only on the show, but work I do with my clients, because I do think it's really important. And we're still in that phase in healthcare where we have things we have to work with how they already are, but how do we bridge to the future? And then how do we also make sure what we're building for clinicians is actually something that's going to work for them versus sort of tinkering in our labs and then coming out and being like, ta-da, we hope you think this is amazing. Okay, so my next question, you and I talk about this a lot also, but I want to know for you, so obviously you're a Black person, you're a founder, you're a PhD. Tell me some of the unique challenges, some of the things that come with being that in this very specific digital health VC kind of space.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two ways of looking at the difficulties there. I think from one side of things, there's Black people have not necessarily had the best experience with the healthcare system in the US, over the last few hundred years. And so there are a ton of disparities that are kind of intrinsically built into the way that we deliver health care, the way that we diagnose, the way that we treat populations. We've been seeing it for the last year and a half, kind of a light has been shown on that, right? So I think one of the difficulties I have is that, I am bringing in kind of that lens when I work in healthcare. And so there are problems that I see or others like me may see that kind of the general population that actually has kind of the power over how things are done in healthcare, they don't necessarily see it. And if it's not glaring to them, nothing really is going to happen about it. So I think for me personally, I've had to kind of learn how to, you have to learn when to fight those battles and when not to, because sometimes you are just kind of barking up the wrong tree and you're spending energy on things that probably aren't necessarily going to move the needle. From the other side of things, I think just in general, as a Black founder trying to build a company, and I think this is Black people, but I think it goes broader than that to just kind of underrepresented groups in the technological ecosystem. I think women deal with this. I think brown people, wherever you're from, I think there are difficulties when it comes to being taken seriously. One of the reasons that I really pushed forward with a PhD, and even with advice from my parents, is that, look, even if you're not going to do anything with this degree, people will take you seriously. And I remember having that conversation with my mom a lot during grad school, because early in grad school, I was having a hard time. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to continue with it. I thought about leaving with a master's on multiple occasions. And every time I went back to my parents to talk about it, it was kind of like, hey, we get it. However, there's kind of no replacement for people having to address you as Dr. Gamble. And you are going to get a seat at tables that normally you wouldn't if you did not have that title. And I've definitely seen that play out, in my early career. I think some of the other sides of that being taken seriously, we're building some really cool, far out there technology. And we've definitely come across, sometimes it's VCs, sometimes it's healthcare systems, whatever it may be, where stakeholders don't believe that the technology is real. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the face of that technology is me, a Black man. Whereas if I look different, I think a lot of the things that we're doing would be taken more seriously. And so, for me, I think it definitely, it really ate at me for a while. And then eventually I got to a point where it was like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to prove people wrong, and so for me, like if our company is doing well, if our technology is changing people's lives, I dare you to tell me that we didn't build this. I dare you to tell me that this isn't real, because in the end, the patient experience speaks for itself. The joy that I've seen on people's faces when they come here to our office and demo the CloudClinic. I mean, I've seen seasoned investors who've been in healthcare for decades jaw drop, let out a few curse words as like, oh my God, like what did I just experience? And like, that's when like, oh crap, okay, we're on to something. Like, we've built something really amazing that's going to really change how people experience healthcare. So yeah, I mean, bringing that all back, whether you're a founder or whether you're just in the professional space in general, being in a marginalized group, you're always going to face pushback. I imagine that you, in your career, as a woman working in health systems, those have not always been the safest and most fulfilling environments for women. And I think we're starting to see the evolution on some of these things, but like you and I have discussed before, it's got a long way to go too. So yeah, I mean, all you can do on a day-to-day basis is be the best version of yourself that you can be, and not give people a reason, to have anything to lean on, when they do critique you on these things. And so I think our company speaks for itself. For me, I think my credentials speak for themselves. So I try not to, spend too much mind space on that, but there are times where it definitely can be difficult.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason I asked that of you, and we talk about them, of course, yeah, in healthcare, I've been, outside of a chief medical officer meeting with 14, white men, one token white woman, and someone comes out, oh, young lady, are you the one who's coming in to present? I'm thinking, well, I'm at the time 42, so I'm not that young. All I thought was, there was a man out here my same age. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have been called young man, but that's okay. And I mean, that's part of talking about it, right? Is to understand what do marginalized communities have to look at? What do we have to, go through? And like you said, the credentials are super important. And so you put in that work to get that. And so I want to, of course, give a shout out for Rezilient has gone into the top 10 finale for XPRIZE in the robotics space, which again, that's credibility. And what's different there is they don't care what you look like or who you are. It is literally based on what you designed. and what you have. So congrats on that, because I love that too. So yeah, but I think also I always like to still bring it up, whether it's women or people of color, or even when I'm talking with patients on the show, is that we have to see how people who have gone before us, so that other people can be like, all right, I can do it, I'm in. So thank you, because again, you will be an inspiration to many other, young men and women coming up and saying like, hey man, there's people who look like me, there's people who are like me, and I can do the same thing. Okay, so my final question is, as you know, in healthcare, and certainly in the digital health space, we always think of the patients as our customers. And I have a very different view of who our customers are, because we can't have patients without the clinicians who serve those patients. So for you, what are some of the most important things when you're making decisions about solutions that you're designing for clinicians?
Yeah, I mean, so there are definitely two sides to that problem, right? Because, and this is the hard part in healthcare, is that there are many stakeholders. And so whatever you design, it has to meet the needs of all of those stakeholders. For us, I think when we originally started this company and started designing, it was very much from the perspective of the physician. And I still to this day, and I think in recent year or so, we definitely kind of recentered the patient, especially as you think about convenience and moments of joy. However, behind those moments of joy, you always have to make sure that the physician has everything they need to do their job at a high level of quality and in a compliant manner. And if you don't have a happy doctor, you're likely to not have a happy patient. So you're always juggling those things, and you find yourself, especially building technology, where it's hard to center both at the same time, and you end up making trade-offs at different points in time in the experience for one or the other. But in the end, for me, like my big philosophy, even when we were designing, was let me go shadow doctors. Right. So I spent hundreds of hours shadowing private practice physicians and seeing what does their workflow look like throughout the day. So as we are trying to build what is a fully virtual outpatient experience, I always have that in the back of my mind. So it's a little bit easier to make decisions about, okay, if we design it this way, am I actually getting in the way of that doctor doing what they need to do to make a diagnosis? Am I creating extra work for the doctor? Because if I'm creating extra work for them, they're going to tend to say, I'm not doing it. Burnout is a huge issue for physicians right now. So whatever you can do to make their jobs a bit easier, I think in the end, that ends up trickling down to a better experience for the patient. And then on the other side of that, then yeah, like if we believe that convenience is kind of the core thing that we're trying to do for patients, convenience and making sure a doctor can do their job appropriate are not always, they can be at odds with each other. And that's actually the core premise of our company, is that virtual care by itself is fantastic for the patient. However, the doctor can't do their job. And so if you want the doctor to do their job fully, you have to have some type of in-person physical component. And our CloudClinics are the way where we've kind of married those two things together. And so I want to give the patient as much convenience as I can give them in the most clinically relevant manner that's always how we talk here. So yeah, I think you can deliver for both, but it definitely is a juggling act.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think what is important is that idea of, as startups, as designers, as innovators, you said, I've spent hours looking at the workflows, being in clinics.
Yep.
designers have to know what actually happens in healthcare, so then they can design to have an experience that's going to enhance it. So Jeff, oh my gosh, thanks for coming on the podcast. Always a pleasure to have you. Excited for the work that Rezilient is doing, and we'll certainly have you back on the show as Rezilient continues to grow and make moves in the healthcare space. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sam. It's always a pleasure. And it's been an absolute blast working with you. And yeah, looking forward to being back on the show to talk about our progress in the future.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, that was an awesome podcast. So excited I get a chance to interview people, not only with great companies, but also that I know personally and how they work, and just really exciting to see the journey of founders. So with that, make sure you subscribe to the episode of Sam Talks Telehealth so you always know when we've got the latest things coming out, and we'll see you back here in the next episode.